Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I begin in the name of the God whose mercy is profound, whose kindness is forever. Why do we need religion? Is what I have to talk about. Humans, the way they have been designed by the Creator, have two types of needs in this life that we are experiencing. One type of need is what I would call the physical need. We need food to survive and so on. The other type of need is intellectual slash spiritual. Both needs are definite needs, and they both urge us, incline us to do something to satisfy them. If we do not strive and struggle to satisfy our physical needs, we will be in trouble, and our survival is going to be in danger. So, probably, we like it or not, we strive and struggle to meet our physical needs. Likewise, there is a strong urge, yearning within humans to satisfy those needs which are not material, physical in nature. They are intellectual and spiritual in nature. Like in the case of physical needs, if you do not strive, you do not struggle, you will not be able to satisfy those needs. The Quran says in the case of striving to satisfy physical needs, وَابْتَغُوا مِنْ فَضْلِ اللَّهِ. Strive to look for God's blessings, His bounty. Whatever we earn for our sustenance is the Almighty's bounties. They are His blessings. They are available. They are there. But they would not come our way if we do not strive for them, if we do not do as best as is possible for us to look for them. Likewise, there are physical, spiritual needs. They are definite needs. But again, you won't get them. You won't get your needs satisfied if you do not strive in the right manner and to a minimum desired extent. Now, what are those needs? I don't have to explain to you that we need physical resources to survive. But somehow we do need to explain to each other that likewise we also have some other needs which are equally important, if not more, in the domain of non-physical, non-material world. The life that we are living in, if we try to understand it properly, seriously, I think we will all agree that some exceptions apart, this life is wonderful. It's brilliant. It's an experience that we all are enjoying. We love it. We would not want to part with it. Nobody wants to die. And when somebody dies, you're really sad. It's a tragedy. So life is wonderful. You know, no matter how much you criticize it, it's something we've all accepted and we're all celebrating. But did we do something to deserve it. No, it has been given to us like a gift, something that we never strived for, but once we've gotten it, we love it. It's in our nature that if somebody gives us something good, even if it's ordinary, as a good human, we we want to say thank you. We want to express our gratefulness. Life has been given to us as really brilliant. More often than not, we realize that what we are going through is excellent. We are loving it. So, one of the needs that we have in this life is that we would like to say thank you. We would like to express our gratefulness, which indeed is a need. There is another aspect of our life, probably call it just the opposite of it. Life has problems. We have difficulties, troubles. We go through phases in our lives when we need somebody else's help, support, confidence. Okay, in many cases, we do get that support from humans, people around us, the system that we are a part of, but not always. In some cases, shall I call, say many cases, we don't find anybody around us, not even the very closest of people that we are normally accustomed to getting help from, to come to our rescue. We are sad, at times we are vulnerable, we are desperate, and we want somebody to come to our rescue. We want someone to talk to. We want somebody who's strong, who is in command, control, to be able to express our desperation to. That too is a need. Then the life that we are going through, experiencing, the manner we all humans have been designed, we have certain principles and norms within us which tell us that there are certain things which we are expected not to do. They're bad, they're evil, they're filthy. And there are certain other things which we are expected to do, which are desirable, which are good. Surprisingly, we all humans have the same list of do's and don'ts, which we all share. There could be some minor differences in the manner they are to be performed, but the basic principles are the same. Telling a lie is evil, bad. Telling what is correct and true is good. Helping people, more particularly those who are weak and vulnerable, is desirable. And causing pain to them is undesirable. And I tell you, it's a long list of do's and don'ts, of expectations which our conscience has, it carries. The trouble is that the real life that we are living in quite often causes us to go through experiences where we see that what is desirable is not happening, and what is undesirable is predominant, is what you see quite often taking place. And again, you're puzzled, you're worried. Again, you feel deep inside the need for something to be done about it. Again, probably talking about the same morality that is there within us. One, arguably, the most important aspect of morality that we have within our personalities that we all acknowledge, understand, deeply yearn for, is justice. We all want that the life that we are living in should be a life, a world of justice and fair play. But as we all know, this life is unjust, it's unfair. The ideal that we want to see happening is not happening, is not taking place. Because one of the reasons is that we humans, when decision making is left to us, we do not decide in many cases in a way which is fair and just. We are selfish, we are biased, we decide in favor of those who are close to us and at the expense of those whom we do not know quite as well. That's one aspect of it. Humans, when they are taking decisions on their own, in many cases, they are deciding unfairly. Quite often, nothing happens. You know, the decisions, unfair, unjust decisions, they prevail. But even if all humans were to be absolutely fair and just, this life is still unfair, despite its brilliance, despite the fact that we love it. I'm sure that you all must have thought about it and worried about it, and it keeps bugging us, worrying us. Why is it that there are some people who are born rich and they've got luxuries in their lives, and there are so many others who are poor, weak, vulnerable? There are some who have good health, there are others who are not healthy. There are some who have long lives, there are others who have not quite as long lives. Life is full of injustices. It doesn't make sense. You see people who are tortured, who are required to go through pains, difficulties for no fault of theirs. I mean, I'm sure that there are pictures in our minds of things that have happened not very long ago, thanks to the tremendous progress in the world of communication that has taken place. There are pictures, there are happenings which they just remain stuck in your mind. I mean, I can't forget, honestly, the recent clip that I saw where an Israeli soldier is killing a Palestinian young child, man, strangling him to death, begging for mercy and help, and it's not coming. It's an unfair world. It's a world which we love. It's a life we would want it to carry on. But the trouble is that there are injustices happening every now and then, everywhere. Some places more than others. Last but not the least, uh, the life that we are living, experiencing, the life that we love, is the life that we would not want to end. Honest to God, we all want eternity. We want to take care of our health. We want to live happily. But who doesn't know that this life, sooner or later, is going to come to an end? Death is a problem, is a serious problem. Death is, allow me to say, unnatural. Death is unacceptable. You know, when we have tears in our eyes and when we are sad at the demise of somebody close, it's in a sense a protest, an expression of the fact that we don't accept it. Why has it happened? It shouldn't have happened. I mean, why? Even though we all know, nobody can deny the fact that we are all going to die. And yet, and somebody dies, which is something quite predictable, it's not acceptable. So, all these aspects of our lives are the ones which incline an individual, a decent human being, a serious minded person who is not madly, passionately after the worldly desires only. You are bound to think about the question as to why is it happening and what's the solution, what's the way out, what's the answer. So that's what causes religion to be sought. As I said earlier, there are material physical needs which, if we do not strive to take care of them, very soon we'll be in trouble. We'll not be able to survive. In the case of these, call them intellectual, or I'm saying spiritual needs, you would not die, so long as you are to live. But you'll remain empty. You'll keep wondering. You'll remain dissatisfied. You will live in a life which will be a life incomplete, begging for answers, and you will live. Maybe you will try to enjoy your life, but you will deep inside all the time wondering and worrying that it's not a life which really can be enjoyed properly. So this need has been created in humans so that they should look for answers. And the answer comes from God through his message, through religion. It's not that humans have not tried it otherwise. Humans have, through their own understanding, made attempts to create religion or a religion-like understanding, philosophy. But obviously, it's a problem, a paradox that has to be solved by the source that created it. So, God's message, his religion, helps us in getting answers to these questions. So, for example, when we accept religion, we come to learn about the fact that this world has been created by a God. He is one and the only. He has all the good attributes. He loves us, he cares for us. And when we thank him, he knows that we are doing it. And he's pleased about it. So in a religion, we have been given expressions of gratefulness, the manner that we should worship God Almighty. And when we do it, when we thank God for all that he has done to us, we feel good about it. We have contentment. Honest to God, when you get the privilege of doing one good prostration sajda, you get a feeling as if you've done the best thing that you could do in this world. It's a deep down ourselves, our mind, our soul. We have this satisfaction, contentment that it's brilliant. God's message tells us that when we are worried, when we are in trouble, when we are vulnerable, he is there to come to our rescue. He helps. He listens to our prayers, and he quite often removes the difficulties that we are facing. On other occasions, he does things which we were not expecting, but he does them differently because he knows better. So the Quran says, for example, أَمَّنْ يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ فَيَكْشِفِ السُّوءَ, is not the one who listens to the prayers of those who are desperate and then removes their difficulties. Is he not worthy of their worship? So, God is the one who has created these difficulties for us to incline towards Him. So, the need that He has created has been done for a purpose, so that once we are in desperate need to seek help from outside, we seek help from Him. Then I mentioned about morality. This morality has been given to all humans in this life so that we value it, we take care of it, we do what our conscience tells us is the right thing to do, despite the fact that at times we are, from a worldly point of view, we are in trouble. God's message tells us that this morality that has been given to us is not there for no reason. It's with us because He wants to see as to who are the ones who are concerned about it and who are the ones who ignore the expectations of conscience. So, this life, He tells us, is a trial wherein our response to our instincts of morality are being noticed, noted, and in the next life, our performance vis-a-vis our morality is going to be either rewarded or punished. So, this concern for the presence of morality on the one hand, and a lack of concern in the system that we are living in for that morality is also something which is addressed in God's message. Likewise, the Almighty tells us that if you find this world unjust, don't worry. There is another world coming soon, which is going to be absolutely fair and just. And in fact, the very reason why this life is unjust is that God again wants you all to be looking for the right answer, the just world, the religious message that confirms to you that this unjust world is going to give way to a fair, just world. So, the day of judgment has been described as Yawmuddin, the day of accountability, the day of justice. So, again, that need that we have inside us is responded to by the Almighty's message. And finally, the death that we all don't want to happen, don't want to see happening, is something which is, according to the message of the Almighty, is only an occasion for the individual living in this life to be transferred to another world. It's not that the individual perishes, but in fact gets transferred. And the next life, which is going to begin on the day of judgment, is going to be a life where death is not going to be there anymore. Humans shall survive forever. The need that we have inside us right from the beginning, death is not acceptable. It's not something that we feel comfortable with, is what is going to disappear. So what I'm trying to say is that why religion? Because the way we have been designed, our life has been designed, our personalities have been designed, we have within us needs, definite, serious needs, which if we are not carefree in this life, passionately, madly after petty worldly desires, we will continue to time and again think about, worry about, seek for the answers to the problems that all humans go through, the questions that they confront. So long as these aspects of life remain, religion and its need would continue to be there. You remove these problems and probably will not need religion anymore. But who can remove it? So the fact of the matter is that this life of ours is incomplete without God's message, which is what helps us in appreciating that our Creator has a definite plan and He has not created us for no reason. It is not that we came to existence through a fluke happening. You know, nobody did it. There was a big bang and then things started happening gradually. I'm not ridiculing the methodology that has been mentioned by some intelligent people. I am questioning the assumption that whatever happened, howsoever it happened, whatever happened without anybody doing it, well, that is absolute rubbish. There is a creator, wise, merciful, powerful, fair, knowledgeable, hearing, and he has got all the good attributes, who has designed this life and has divided it into two parts: the worldly life of trial and the next life of rewards and punishments. But why should one be interested in Islam? To accept the message of Islam as the right answer to these questions. Quite honestly, when when an individual, a human, is born and is brought up in a society, it's quite understandable that he or she is going to be influenced by the ideology that the person experiences to begin with. There's nothing wrong in it. And then obviously you either get satisfactory answers or you feel uncomfortable and you look for better answers. That's what the Almighty wants us all to do. But as Muslims, we look for the response of the Almighty that is there with us in the name of Islam. There are three reasons I will briefly mention. Of course, each reason needs to be described in greater detail. Why Islam makes a lot of sense. Number one, if you understand the Almighty's message the way it has been described in the Quran, Sunnah, it gives answers to all these questions in a manner that you are satisfied. You keep thinking, you keep using your intellect, you keep questioning, and you keep getting answers. When you find proper, adequate answers, appropriate, satisfying, what you say to yourself is that, that's it, I've got it. So, I have got what I was seeking to get. Quite the same way as when you are hungry, you get good healthy food. You tell yourself that it's great, I mean, that's what I needed. And the moment you consume it, you get this feeling that the very need, the very food that I needed is what I've got. It's quite similarly when we get answers of God in His message to the perplexing questions that I've mentioned, referred to, and you think about them, you find yourself comfortable and you say, okay, I got it, right? This is the right answer. Only this could have been the answer. So that's one reason. The other reason is that the message of Islam that we have been given, if we properly understand it, is the message which clearly appears to have emerged from the one source that claimed that it's from God. Our source is Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. May God's mercy be on him. He was the one who claimed that he has got God's message. Now, in order for the message that he claimed to give from God, for it to be credible, we must feel confident that the message right now that is with us 1400 plus years later, it should be the same message. It should not have undergone changes, editing, and tampering. And that's what we feel very confident about. It's the same Quran, the same words, and it's the same practices, the same prayer, the same fasting, etc. So that again is something that gives us a feeling of confidence, of satisfaction. And a third reason why Islam makes sense is that when you read the Quran, you find that the Quran is urging us to acknowledge, believe in three important beliefs: God, life hereafter, and prophets, divine revelation. And in the case of all these three beliefs, the invitation that the Almighty extends is an invitation based on intellectual arguments. The Quran has given arguments after arguments to satisfy human intellect as well as conscience, to feel comfortable that indeed there is a God and He is the one who is running the affairs of this world, in complete control and command. And as I said, He's got all the great attributes. It's not something which is thrust upon us, forced down upon our throats, but is something which is presented in a manner that our intellect is asked to ponder and reflect and to find out for itself that the claim indeed is correct. And you read the Quran, and the Quran is doing just that. Likewise, in the case of the life hereafter, the Quran presents the case of the life hereafter in a manner that it gives arguments. It asks the reader to think and ponder and to find out for himself, herself, that this claim is absolutely correct. It makes a lot of sense. Without life hereafter, this life makes no sense whatsoever. So, for instance, the Quran answers this question as to why should there be a life hereafter. The Quran answers this question, how the life hereafter is possible. The Quran answers this question, how is it physically possible? How is it possible from the point of view of information that will most certainly be needed in order for humans to be held accountable? So it gives you answers to the questions. And the third expectation, to believe in prophets, to believe in divine revelation, to believe in the fact that the Quran is the word of God and the Prophet, may God's mercy be on him, is his messenger. The Almighty again presents arguments. In order for the reader to be satisfied, to be convinced that this claim is true, intellectual arguments. So, in the case of the last prophet, may God's mercy be on him, there are four categories of arguments. I'm not saying four arguments. There are four, call them chapters of arguments, which are presented. The argument of the character of the prophet, the arguments of the veracity and the convincing nature of the message itself, the argument which tells us that the prophet was prophesying before coming to this world, the information about his arrival was already known. And the people of the book, the earlier books, they knew very clearly that he was to come. And another argument, another category of arguments is the one confident prophecy that the Prophet, may Allah's mercy be on him, himself made during his lifetime in the earlier part of his prophetic mission, wherein he said that this is going to happen. And when he made that claim, there was no possibility whatsoever, apparently, that he was promising was going to happen. And during his lifetime, as he promised and claimed, it happened. So what I'm trying to say is, obviously I'm not getting into the details, what I'm trying to say is that when the Quran urges the reader to believe in God, to believe in the life hereafter, to believe in the Prophet, it is not doing it by making a statement that believe or perish. It's convincing the reader. The last question that I'm going to address is that if that is the case, why don't people believe that? If the case of God's message is so strong, why isn't it accepted? And let me say that it's neither accepted by those who claim to be believers, the manner it needs to be accepted, nor obviously it is accepted by those who are not believers as yet. Why is it not accepted? There could be two reasons. Obviously, depending upon who the individual is, either one or the other would be relevant. And in some cases, both would be relevant. One reason is that the Quran itself very firmly presents God Almighty's decision that He will not allow people to accept and believe if they're not interested. If you do not have genuine eagerness, you will not get it. If you are not interested, you won't be given the privilege. His message is not a kind of commodity which he is interested in doling out to people without them being inclined. So there is only one genuine test, or call it qualification, eligibility, the point of eligibility, which is your interest, your eagerness. And what stops people from being eager is their interest in the petty worldly desires or their ego. It stops. People don't take interest. Why? Because sadly, there is a fear in the minds of some people that if they will understand the message and accept it, probably their worldly pleasures would go. So might as well not listen to it. Or even if you listen to it, do it selectively. Don't give it the authority to influence you completely. That's sad. So why is it not accepted? One, sometimes people are not interested. And if God says, if they are not interested, I am not interested as well. The other reason is, which is equally valid in many cases, uh, is that apart from the times when the prophets are present physically themselves and doing the task directly, in most other times, the message is presented in a less than ideal manner. And therefore, even if there are some people who are eager, they may not necessarily be influenced by it because the message is not being presented properly. In some cases, it is presented poorly. Uh, a person who is presenting the message through his words of mouth, verbally, but his acts, his character is is very disappointing. So, sometimes it's the poor presentation that becomes a hurdle and doesn't allow people to come close to the Almighty's message. That's what the task for me was. I was asked to speak for 40 minutes. As soon as those 40 minutes have completed, I feel relieved. Now it's for you to ask questions, and I will try to respond to them as best as I can.
Anybody who has a question, there's a mic. Just put it on and so that everybody can hear. Yeah. No? Yes.
I think don't look for a loud voice. It still is going to work probably for this purpose. Uh, So if the mic is not working, we will not have question answer.
No, yeah. So, a human is
एक minute, question. You will kindly conduct. So he's asking, and the next is going to be your choice. जी.
a human is prisoner to boundaries. We all, as humans, are boundaries in all aspects. Boundaries, the world, the universe. Now, how would you explain the Almighty? Does no boundaries, but still any boundary? Like we are encapsulated in a capsule. So, is there something out of that capsule? Now, that outer space or that outer position, has that any capsule? So, I mean, as a human, it's beyond my imaginations that could the Almighty be restricted to? I mean, where does it finish? Or it cannot finish. As a Muslim, my belief is that it cannot finish. But my human mind doesn't logically cannot experience, cannot give me that answer.
How to understand God and what He is? Is He confined to certain space? His physical manifestation, etc. You see, the Quran tells us that as humans, we've got tremendous abilities, capacity, physical as well as intellectual. However, we have our limits in both domains. So, while the Almighty asks us as individuals to use our intellect as best as we can to understand what the truth is, He also informs us that our intellect too has certain limits, beyond which, if you will try to probe, you will get nothing except confusion. You will keep wondering. So, what He has done is, for us, He has clarified the fact that as far as His physical existence is concerned, it is beyond our reach of comprehension understanding, or physical observation. So, for instance, a great prophet of God, Musa alayhi salam, asked God if he could see him. And he said, Lan tarani, you cannot see me. However, look at that hill, and he shard reflected his tajalli on it, and it perished, and Musa, he lost his senses, consciousness. He fell unconscious. When he woke up, the first thing he said was, Ana awwalul mu'minin. I am the first believer in the fact that God cannot be seen. Likewise, the Almighty tells us that if we cannot see God, is there a possibility that we can understand God through analogy? Sometimes, it's a good idea that if you have not seen, for example, your, let's say, grandfather, and there were no pictures as well, somebody might say that, if you look at your uncle who is alive, he resembles your grandfather, and you get an idea of how he looked. That facility is also not available. The Quran tells us, Laysa kamithlihi shayun. There is none similar to it. So, forget about the possibility of us having any idea of his physical self. Then obviously the question arises to how to understand him, how to appreciate him, and how to come close to him. The manner that we can do it, the Quran tells us, is through understanding and appreciating his attributes. So the Quran has introduced us to the attributes of the Almighty and has informed us that all good attributes belong to him, has informed us that all his attributes are perfect, infinite, and moreover, as I said earlier, they are all simultaneously functioning. And we think about them and we apply those attributes to ourselves, to our lives. And that's how we come close to God. I'll just give you one or two examples. His knowledge. He's perfectly knowledgeable. He knows everything. For me, the more relevant part of this understanding is that he knows what I'm doing, what I'm saying. He knows even my intentions. So when I behave, operate in this world with God's attribute of knowledge, you know, all the time in my mind, I'll come close to him. I'll get a feeling of his presence. Likewise, God has another attribute, the attribute of wisdom. He's wise, all wise, perfectly wise. What actually it actually means is that he doesn't ever do anything unwise, anything wrong. So, what it actually means is that if in your life you do as best as you can, you plan, you try to implement your planning and do things properly, and yet things go wrong against your expectations. Things are not apparently acceptable to you. And you ask yourself, "Now, wait a minute, did I do anything wrong? If yes, I'll seek forgiveness from the Almighty and I'll try to take remedial measures. But if I did as best as I could and things have gone against my expectations, there must be something that I don't understand. God is wise, he cannot do anything wrong." So we have been informed about God's attributes and we have been asked to, for the time being at least, stay away from uh, trying to get a comprehension of his physical presence. So that's what is one of the clarities that has been given by the Almighty's message.
So a small little question, so a very small. In your lecture, so you said that this world is full of injustice. Now, is that injustice on part of the humans? It cannot be on part of the Rabbul Alameen. So, basically the injustices that are done is the human part.
I mentioned that the injustices in this world can be of two categories. One, human beings are using their freedom wrongly, injudiciously,
Which means that the world was created in a just manner, right?
right?
And the injustices are human.
That's one part of it. The other part is, which allow me to say, just trying to understand,
So
is God designed? I mean, we know that there are people who are born blind, there are people who are crippled, etc. This is nobody else's design but the Almighty Himself. But God is not unjust, He is just. That is why it's so very important to believe in another life. The suffering that the individuals go through in this life for no fault of theirs is going to be, they're going to be adequately compensated for by the Almighty in the next life. This life, stand alone, is absolutely meaningless. Rubbish. Makes no sense. So there has to be another life. So some part of apparent injustices are a part of the design of this life. But that's because of for a definite reason. That people look at them and they tell themselves that there's going to be another life. Don't worry, be patient, and be absolutely sure that another world is coming just round the corner when these woes are going to be taken care of.
So, um, uh, one question per person is allowed. Okay.
You can ask another question, but there is a heavy penalty for it, and we'll collect it.
So please, the floor is open.
The scientists these days ask for evidence. And you see, there is all that you kindly told us is very relevant. But how to give evidence?
There are two types of evidences. One is what you call physical evidence, which probably you're referring to as scientific evidence, which if you do something in the laboratory, uh, you add a few, uh, you know, components, and as a result, there is something else that gets created. And you say that, okay, oxygen, hydrogen, water, that's how you see. In order for that kind of reality to be acknowledged, all that you need to do is to carefully uh, see what's happening and just observe and acknowledge, accept the conclusion. There is another type of reality which humans do acknowledge, but for which you do not have any uh, physical, material evidence like you see in the laboratories of science, which have to be inferred through intellectual reasoning. You know, you have asked a question and I am trying to respond to it. And hopefully, some people would say that they're both making sense and reasonable. But where is that reason? Where is that mind? Where is that intellect? It's nowhere to be seen. It's just the outcome, the end result, the manifestation of it that is leading, hopefully, people to believe that both of us are sane, and we have some senses which are causing us to speak the way we are speaking, even though the senses are not to be seen. Gravity is another good example. You don't see it, you don't hear it, you don't touch it, you don't taste it, etc. You don't smell it, and yet there is experience repeated over and over again, which causes us to believe that this has to be because of objects coming down, despite the fact that they're thrown up. because of some pulling force within this planet. Obviously, you might ask as to why is it that while gravity is accepted by all, God is not quite as much widely accepted now by intelligent people. Well, quite honestly, uh, there is no sacrifice difficulty attached with accepting gravity. If you declare from today that whoever would believe in gravity is going to be penalized at the rate of rupees 10,000 per day, and I tell you, the majority would say it's all rubbish. Where is gravity? I don't know. It is the difficulty, the problems attached with believing, accepting, and acknowledging what cannot be seen that causes people to go in a mode of denial. You know, believing in God, proper belief in God entails a behavior which is disciplined, responsible. In some other cases, uh, it's a scenario where believing in God is not fashionable. You know, believing in no God is fashionable. So people have these problems. And that's designed by the Almighty that way. Not visible, is unseen, because it's a test of your intellect and your character. So, what God tells us is that there are people whose intellect inclines them to come close to belief, and yet they withdraw. Why? Because they don't want to. And that's what this whole life is all about. It's a trial of our intellect and our character. So that is why it's not possible for us to tell people that, look here, ladies and gentlemen, let's go to the laboratory and let's show you God. No, that's not the nature of this reality. It all depends on what kind of reality you're talking about. You see? So, and obviously, this is something acknowledged by everybody that there are realities which are in the domain of science and its experimentation, and we learn about them. And there are realities which are outside the domain of science.
Why is it that intelligent people don't look around them and see God in everything which is around them? The sun, as you mentioned, the moon, the stars, the plants, the fruits. There is so much of God around them. Why can't they perceive it?
Uh, for one thing, I would say that there are some intelligent people who believe as well. I would say many of them. It's not that all the intelligent people of the world don't believe, and all duffers of the world believe. No, it's not that way. There are, call them, people with higher IQ who are on either side of the divide. The reason, and obviously, don't get me wrong, there are idiots, low intellectual quotients on either side as well. That's God-given capacity. You can do something to improve it a bit, but that's your capacity. The beauty of the trial of this life vis-a-vis the belief is something which doesn't make sense. As I said, one reason or the other, either they don't want to believe, or belief has been presented so poorly, unconvincingly, that they cannot believe. And obviously, it could be both as well. God is going to decide on the day of judgment as to what was the reality. And because He is fair, He is knowledgeable, therefore His decision is going to be absolutely correct. And because He is fair and He is merciful, His decision is going to be completely acceptable.
So basically, it's the sacrifices you have to make to believe in Allah and to believe in religion, which prevent man from following that path.
That's one
Yes,
reason, yes.
because you have to give up many things for Allah, for religion, for the sake of being a good person, which you don't want to give up.
You don't want to change, you don't want to look at the other side. Uh, Sacrifices, yes, most certainly one way of describing it, but I don't want to emphasize it too much so as to scare people away. It's very natural, you just have to do things which are good. Like I can see a hand there.
Um, I come after a long time and I really enjoyed listening to you. It was very calming and helped me connect with my spirituality.
I had memorized my lectures, so don't worry.
Okay, well, my question is that we feed our body, we do everything for the visible way. So, but the real thing is we have to develop our spirituality. So, could you enumerate a few measures that we can take to develop our spirituality in our everyday life?
Exactly 1 year ago, I was ordered to deliver a lecture on Salat prayers. You missed it by 365 days. Honestly, if we start doing our Salat prayers properly, you will have all the contentment that you need to be connected with God and to be satisfied in your life. My topic on that day was how to pray properly, effectively. I'll just briefly repeat. We should pray in a way that we tell ourselves that God is looking at us. So when we have that feeling in our mind, in our heart, we start feeling the presence of God sooner or later. We should try to tell ourselves while praying that you never know, this might turn out to be the last prayer that I'm doing. Quite often we are not praying properly because we are more worried about the things that we have to do after our prayers. So we are thinking about them. So if the next item on the agenda is meeting God and leaving this world, hopefully the quality of your prayer is going to be better. The third thing I mentioned was that let's understand what we are saying in our prayers, because even though the physical aspect, the different postures are also important, they are brilliant, yet what we say is what connects us with God. So let's understand the prayers, the meanings of the utterances that we are expected to make in our prayers. And last but not the least, I mentioned that the prayer has two components. One is the binding part, which under all circumstances has to be recited. And the other is the part which is not binding, which has been left to our discretion. This second part can be, expressed in the manner that we want to, we choose to. And it could be in any language. So as far as Surah Al-Fatiha is concerned, the Quran is concerned, saying Allahu Akbar is concerned, Sami Allahu liman hamida, Rabbana lakal hamd is concerned, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah is concerned, they are all binding, and therefore they all have to be said in the same manner in Arabic. But there is one part which has been left to our discretion to express our feelings before God while we are praying as best as we can. So I think that's the most important thing that we can do in life to bring satisfaction and contentment in our lives. The Quran says, Allah bi zikrillahi tatmainnul qulub. Beware of the fact that it is God's remembrance, zikr, which brings contentment and satisfaction to heart. That's when it's missing, we feel dissatisfied, and when it's there, no matter what is happening in the outside world, we are satisfied.
So, I got this message on WhatsApp, and it says Umar bin Khattab Radhiyallahu anhu said that what is destined will reach you even if it is underneath two mountains, and what is not destined will not reach you even if it is between your two lips, right? And also in the Quran it says that God decides everything and it's all fate, right? So if you believe in that, then why should one work hard? Sometimes I try to understand this thing that whatever is meant to happen for me, if I want to achieve something, that will happen no matter what I do. So should I work hard for it or not? And why should I work hard?
There are two, I would say, components, aspects of this question. One is that no matter what you do, what is destined is going to happen. That is one general understanding. The other accompanying understanding is that no matter what you do, if you were to be guided, you will be guided. And if you were to be misguided, you will be misguided. And all the speeches and lectures you deliver come to a complete knot after you come to learn about this understanding. You say, what's the point? What's the purpose of doing all this? You see, the reality is that the Quran says, as I said in the earlier part of my presentation, when God asks us to earn, for example, the Almighty says, وَابْتَغُوا مِن فَضْلِ اللَّهِ. Search for Allah's fazl, His bounties, His mercy, that He has kept, arranged for you to search for it. But it's only when you're going to look for it that you will get it. But if you don't look for it, despite the fact that it's there, you won't get it. Likewise, if you search for something which is not there, you won't get it. So two conditions have to be satisfied for something to happen. One is that it's there for you. God has arranged it for you, destined it for you. And the other thing is that you look for it. Now, as far as this whole question of predestination is concerned, be clear about the fact that it has got to do with two attributes of the Almighty: His knowledge and His justice. As I said earlier in response to one of the questions, all His attributes are complete. His knowledge is complete, and Him being just is also an attribute in Him which is complete. His complete knowledge requires, entails, that He should know everything, past, present, and future in all its details. Well, in actual fact, I get confused even when I make this statement, but the fact of the matter is, for Him, past, present, and future are all the same, you know. So He knows what I'm saying. He knew before what I'm saying, what you asked me. But then there is another aspect of His attributes, which is justice, which is again complete. And justice requires that I be held accountable only for what I do on my own volition. I do it voluntarily, freely. And that is exactly how it happens. And I'm sure that you would agree that we are speaking freely here, without any, what we are doing freely, without being forced. So the complete picture is this, that God knows what I will do. But He also knows that what I will do freely, without being forced. Now, this aspect of understanding is what we cannot fully grasp, we cannot fully comprehend. Not because it's wrong, but because our intellect is limited. So it's beyond us. So things are predestined. What it means is that God knows about them beforehand. But what it doesn't mean is that they are all happening mechanically and there is nobody else, no other agent involved playing any role. So, That's how we have been given to understand. And human intellect, credentials, etc. God is going to make sure that he gets guided because he deserves it.
Question. Until it doesn't matter. Ask them.
Okay.
The-
What about the concept of God having given us the choice to? There are two paths in front of us, and whichever path we choose, the right or the wrong, that will reflect in our um, His evaluation of us.
Sacrifice, at times it asks for you to change yourself. At times, let's face it, it's a little boring. And what is not right quite often is very exciting, very attractive, uh, immediately rewarding. But simultaneously, when we are going for it, we know deep inside that it's wrong. The person who tells a lie knows that he's cheating, but he does it because he's becoming popular as a result, he's getting wealth as a consequence. So that's what the trial of this life is all about. That the two paths are clear, but then we have been given a choice, and there are trials, tests associated with doing what is right, and there are immediate, seemingly immediate successes attached with doing what is wrong. That's what we are all going through.
So one question might not be exactly related to this lecture, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with all his wisdom, with all his capacity, his infinite ability to do things, has he limited the testing and all this just to this one world? Because he says that the human beings are ashraful makhluqat, as it says in the Quran. Does it say anywhere in the Quran that there might be another, more number of people or something like us? Because when I see that this is just a limited number of people that are being tested and that Allah will put in heaven, somehow it seems to me that it's too little.
Um, for one thing, we have been made superior to many other beings, but we are not the very best. This is uh, what we infer from Surah Bani Israel, wherein the Almighty says that وَفَضَّلْنَاهُمْ عَلَى كَثِيرٍ مِمَّنْ خَلَقْنَا تَفْضِيلًا. We made him superior over many others that we have created. لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ التَّقْوِيمِ does not mean that we are the most superior. The other thing is that, we humans are billions in numbers right now. Race is going to last in this planet, in this life. So it's not a small experiment, so it's a pretty big thing happening. However, having said that, the Quran in one of its verses has given an indication that there are most probably, most probably I'm saying because my understanding can be wrong, but the Quran is pretty much clear that like our planet, there are six more. So in Surah Talaq, the 65th Surah, the Almighty says that He has created Sab'a Samawat wa minal ardi mithlahunna, seven heavens and earths likewise. So you never know that it's exactly the same kind of trial going on there. And by the way, mind you, one thing we know for sure, that it's not just us humans, men and women, it's jinns as well, who are being tested right here in this life. And you never know, there some of them might be present here right now. So there's quite a few things happening. So, it's not a small matter. It's a big event. It's life. Can I have a look here? Maybe no.
No question.
Thankfully, no questions. That's great. I always like the audience that doesn't ask questions.
Any other question not related to what we talked about today? Generally about life, you want to ask. This is an opportunity. It seems we have a very satisfied
Alhamdulillah.
audience.
Sabir and Taqwa. Both have reached.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, of course.
Dr. Saab, religion is belief in God. And as we all know, the many qualities of God, they're all the way from which create fear, but they also create the love of God and His compassion and many other such qualities. Why do we find, not you, but member masjid पे जब जाते हैं तो वहाँ पे अल्लाह का डर डाला जाता है दिल में, ना कि ये the compassion and the love, which somehow I find is a better way of reaching the Creator than through fear. तो हमारे में आम तौर पे and particularly जहाँ माशरा में इतनी जहालत है, वहाँ पे डर से कन्विक्शन की बात की जाती है, इस्लाम की बात की जाती है. ये जो इतनी बड़ी क्वालिटी है अल्लाह ताला की of compassion, of love, of care, which is so endearing. तो उस जहाँ पे आम पाकिस्तानी हैं उनको डराया क्यों जाता है? अब आप तो नहीं जाके डराएंगे उनको. What is the difference and how can we change this attitude?
Right, it's very, very relevant, I think. Why is it that quite often we find that when we listen to religious presentations, there is a predominant element of fear for people to be attracted towards the message. And one of the things that I've seen happening as a consequence is that this leads to extremism. Because your reason for coming close to religion is not quite as much intellectual as it is some kind of fear that has been created in your mind, in your hearts. And the result is that the gentleman or the lady who's done it is the one then who is going to be, in most cases, dominate your life because you've really been scared to death. But why does it happen in the first place? Let me be candid, The fact of the matter is that there is a lot of mention of hell and fear of God in the Quran. So, what you find is that people who read the Quran, its text, they get this overwhelming inclination that that's how it has to be presented. So then, how can we object to it? Well, I'll tell you why I believe that even though it's mentioned in the Quran quite frequently, the presentation that our religious people make should not be so overwhelmingly inclined towards fear-creating messages. You see, the very first verse of the Quran is Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. That's where I also started my presentation from. The first thing that creates a need for religion is that I just want to thank the one who has given me all that I've got. I need to thank him and be grateful to him all the time. And that's the starting point of the Quran as well. And the Quran continues to mention this fact that we need to do shukr, we need to thank God, we need to prostrate before Him, we need to worship Him, and so on. And that's the essence, that's the real spirit of the message. However, it is a reality that this life is a trial. All humans have been designed by God to be good. And therefore, if humans were to follow their natural instincts, they would be doing things which are correct, appropriate, and would please God and would enter the paradise. But because this life is a trial, therefore the Almighty has given freedom to humans to choose whatever they want to. And it is this freedom which gives rise to or creates evil. The misuse of freedom is what evil is, which obviously is by design, so that the Almighty could distinguish those who are following the right track by using their freedom properly from those who are misusing it. Because the Quran, when it got revealed, at the time when it was being revealed, there was a nation which, by misusing its freedom, was on the verge of disaster. The Quran has repeatedly warned, it has repeatedly cautioned them and mentioned the fact that they're going to be destroyed. So, that again is because of this caring nature, the loving nature of the Almighty that has compelled him to have this message of warning uh, so frequently expressed in the Quran. So it's all love, it's all concern. But the fact of the matter is that this life is a real trial. And in the next life, there are going to be one of the two consequences, either success or failure. Now, it is the concern that the failure is the option that humans should not go for that causes the Quran to warn and to create within people the fear of the wrong, evil consequences. But the reason why it's there and it's so predominant, as I said, is because the Quran, first and foremost, is warning Quraysh, the leaders of Quraysh, the pagans, polytheists, the people of the book who were rejecting the Prophet, because as a consequence of them doing it, they had come so close to getting, falling into that ditch of disaster that the Almighty repeatedly asks them to stay away from it. But I'm sure that when under normal circumstances, when the message of the Almighty is to be presented, it should emphasize more on A, the fact that it's all real, it's true, and B, that He cares for us. His real predominant attribute is love, mercy. Warahmati wasi'at kulla shay, the Quran says. And my mercy, it encompasses, it engulfs over everything else. So that's how it is. That's why it is. So I think those who are preaching, they should be helped in understanding that the frequent mention of the possibility of punishment has a reason, and they should be aware of the fact that the time and the society and the people that they are addressing, many people don't feel comfortable with that kind of messages. So, they should be emphasizing on the fact which is the real theme of the Quran, which is to acknowledge God, to understand Him, to love Him, to worship Him, and yes, to stay away from evil, stay away from rejecting His message, because that is going to lead them to disastrous consequences.
So shouldn't we have an academy how to train these people? Because I was looking at the requirements for the imam in Istanbul of the Grand Mosque. और उनकी requirements तो इतनी ज़्यादा थी कि उनको ये भी आना चाहिए, ये भी आना चाहिए, उनको खूबसूरत भी होना चाहिए, और वो बोले तो लोग सुने, और उनको अरबी भी आनी चाहिए, आर्ट ऑफ फाइटिंग भी आनी चाहिए, पता नहीं क्या कुछ आना चाहिए था। तो यहाँ पे जो हमारे इमाम होते हैं उनको पकड़ के ट्रेन करें सर।
असल में you see the thing is कि जो हमारे the imams and the religious scholars in our country are there the way they are because of the neglect of the society in general. It is the responsibility of an Islamic state to make sure that they construct masajid, and they run the affairs of it, and they arrange for scholars. You see, we were concerned about our health. We made medical colleges. We were concerned about our bridges and roads and dams, and we created engineering universities. We were not concerned about religion, so we did not bother to be interested and serious about it. When you leave religion in private hands, then a masjid is always going to belong to a sect. If I will make a masjid, it will be either Barelvi or Deobandi or Ahli Hadith or Shia, because I belong to a sect. When the state would make a masjid, it would be for Muslims. So I think what has happened in our country for the last 70 years is, an attitude of neglect towards religious matters, and they have now they're showing their head in such strong manner that probably we are realizing it, but it's never too late. But we still can do things to remedy.
The simple fact that एक मौलवी रख लेते हैं 500 रुपए का कि आगे बच्चे को पढ़ाते हैं, और वहाँ पे जब फिजिक्स या केमिस्ट्री की ट्यूशन रख दियो तो you pay by the hour, 2,000 rupees per hour. मतलब their status has to be elevated, their education has to. It is something really to be looked into.
Right. I will not say anything strong, because that probably might mean that I am trying to support my own cause.
Can I ask an unrelated question?
Yeah, okay.
If there's time.
We have 5 minutes more for questions.
अगर किसी का नहीं है।
जी।
मैं जी डॉक्टर साहब पिछले दिनों में वेस्ट में प्रॉब्लली आई डोंट नो यहाँ आया कि नहीं, एक यूट्यूब पे एक गैर मुस्लिम ने सेल्फी से लेके ना तो ये दिखाया है खाना काबा में कि ये जी बोसा दे रहे हैं। मुसलमान देखें, ये कहते हैं कि देयर इज वन गॉड और बुत परस्ती को ख़त्म किया है, बट आई एम शोइंग यू, और ये वीडियो कहीं बाहर वेस्ट में फिर रहा है कि जहाँ वो दिखा रहे हैं कि जी पूरा कि तवाफ देखो कर रहे हैं, ये बोसा सबसे बढ़ के ये बोसा का, तो इनका खुदा तो ये कहते हैं एक है और बुत परस्ती को ख़त्म किया गया है, तो ये क्या चीज़ है? तो इसका जवाब मैंने अभी तक इसका तोड़ नहीं देखा, तो what would be the absolute short, brief and strong answer to this?
देखिए, एक तो खैर कभी भी क्रिटिसिज्म से आपको घबराना नहीं चाहिए. क्रिटिसिज्म इज ऑलवेज गुड. इन हज whatever we do is symbolic. So the house of God does not mean that God resides there. The house of God is a house, a room erected for remembering God. It's symbolic. Likewise, Hajar Aswad has been described as Yaminullah, the right hand of God. When we go there and kiss it or we signal towards it as a gesture, we are actually giving our oath of allegiance to the Almighty by kissing or holding on to His right hand, which is symbolically, the same act as was done in the earlier times when somebody would join a tribe or would show his affiliation, strong commitment to the tribe by holding the right hand of the chief and kissing it. So it's all symbolic. Unfortunately, Muslims do most of their rituals without understanding what they mean. And therefore, it gives reasons for others to make such statements. But I said that criticism is always good because it helps us in revisiting our performance. There is nothing polytheistic in it. We Muslims should tell them that when we see the house of God, we remember only God, the one and the only. We remember nobody else. In all other manifestations of polytheism, which are done through, let's say, statues, pictures, etc., there is a definite non-God deity who is actually the focus of your concentration. There is somebody other than God. When we kiss Hajar Aswad, the black stone, or when we look at the Kaaba, we are doing it only for the one who is our creator and our sustainer. We should tell people that we do not even have the Prophet, may God's mercy be on him, in our mind. We only remember God. This is the expression, manifestation of monotheism, and it's highest level. It's the excellence of it that we achieve. But that is something we should explain to it. We should not react angrily. The person who has done it, the poor chap doesn't even know. And I think he's got good reasons to say that. Because what he's seeing apparently is causing him to feel that they are doing no different. But I think it's our duty to tell them that, it's not polytheism.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Zara put up a question. She said कि भी अगर अल्लाह ताला ने already हमें right or wrong का पता लगा तो और हमारे क्या अजर होना है तो हम क्यों why should we work for it? तो बात ये है कि अल्लाह ताला ने आपको right और wrong बता दिया है और उसके बाद आपका अल्लाह ताला रुझान देखता है कि कैसा आपका रुझान है तो जैसा ही आपका रुझान होगा वैसे ही फिर आपका रिजल्ट अल्लाह ताला बना देता है.
True. बिल्कुल सही.
कुरान मजीद में जहाँ भी दोज़ख का जिक्र आया उसके फौरन बाद यूजुअली मेंशन आया एकदम कि जन्नत का कि जो लोग बुरे काम करेंगे उनको ये होगा जो अच्छे करेंगे उनको जन्नत मिलेगी इन विच दे लिव फॉरएवर. कुछ लोग वो पहली बात को भूल जाते हैं इसलिए मेरा ख्याल है वो भी रिमाइंड करना ज़रूरी है कि सज़ा भी मिलेगी. सब ये कहते हैं कि अल्लाह को गफूर रहीम है और हम सब जानते हैं और उसकी रहमत हर चीज़ पर छाई हुई है. तो इस चीज़ को वो लेके हाथ में ये कहते हैं कि जो भी हम करेंगे अल्लाह हमें माफ़ कर ही देगा.
यू आर राइट, ये बात भी है. लेकिन वो मसला ये है कि लोग क्या करते हैं, वो देखते हैं कि लोग नमाज नहीं पढ़ रहे मिसाल के तौर पर, या कोई एक दो चीज़ें और उनको उनकी बुरी लगती हैं तो वो ज़्यादा वो जहन्नुम का हवाला देते हैं जो इनका कंसर्न है. हमारी प्रेजेंटेशन में बैलेंस होना चाहिए. बात आपकी सही है कि कुरान मजीद में जहन्नुम के जिक्र के साथ जन्नत का भी जिक्र है, मगर ये बात सही है कि असल में कुरान एक इंजार की, वार्निंग की किताब है. इट इज़ वार्निंग अ नेशन विच वॉज ऑन द वर्ज ऑफ बीइंग थ्रोन इनटू डिजास्टर, और वो वत्तकू यौमन ला तजज़ी उस बनी इसराइल को खिताब करके कहा गया है. बट मोस्ट सर्टनली सो एक पूरा बैलेंस है कि आप अगर अच्छा करेंगे तो आप अच्छा पाएंगे. मगर बहुत से लोग बुरा कर रहे थे तो उनको वार्न किया गया और हमारे लोग उसको जनरलाइज कर देते हैं. ये प्रॉब्लम है. जी
मैं खाला दुआ करेंगी.
प्लीज 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 नहीं आपके लिए नहीं.
इतनी अच्छी बातें की हैं, हम सबको समझाया, बहुत
वो
बहुत शुक्रिया.
दुआ करने वाले जो लेक्चर में मैं एब्सेंट था. वो आवाज आ जाएगी ना सबको तो.
आ जाएगी.
अच्छा ओके ओके.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل صلاة كاملة وسلم سلاما تاما على سيدنا ومولانا محمد تنهل به الكرب وتنفرج بها الكرب وتقضى بها الحوائج وتنال بها الرغائب وحسن الخواتيم ويستسقى الغمام بوجهك الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه في كل لمحة ونفس بعدد كل معلوم لك. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين آمين إله